Alright, and we should be live again now.
Cool.
After that horrendous episode.
It was art.
It's called hentai, and it's art.
That's a good way to describe what you just did.
I'm just warning you, a lot of things make me think of The Office, so. Rudy, hush.
What's Rudy saying?
People like us. In all caps. Rudy.
Like, Rudy, you paid good money, and now you never have to see it again.
Yes.
They did pay good money, though. Let them enjoy it.
But that stream is over. This is the new stream.
True.
This is the new shit.
We're here for spooks and scares.
What was that, Bean Daddy Mandela, the famous singer? Oh, thank you, Bagel. You're too kind. I will now continue to be a famous singer for $20 a song.
Nice one. I'll do, like, because you did one for free, I will also do one for free.
Good.
Which was essentially the song that I was meant to do on a stream that I didn't do.
Yeah.
I'm not singing. I'm not gonna join this little powwow of yours.
That's fine.
Because, unlike you, I would actually try, which would make it 10 times more cringy.
I think you would sound nice.
So, as I'm trying my heart out, everyone's just sitting with their headphones being like, oh, this sweet summer child.
Gonna stream.
Everyone's just spamming in the comments. You're doing great, sweetie.
Oh my god, this
It's
is
like
never going to
you.
stop, is it? Rudy saying you're gonna stream for people like us?
So, Penpal, eh?
Yes, Penpal.
That's what we're all here for.
I can't believe I made it to one of Bard Daddy Musician's streams. Oh, Kenzie, stop!
No. Oh, something I do want to point out because I noticed it when I listened back to the last stream. I don't have any kind of audio setup. I'm just literally speaking to my laptop right now. So that's why I sound like I'm talking in a cardboard box. But two, and no one pointed this out, I just noticed it. If it sounds like when we're goofing around, I'm not laughing or having a fun time, I am laughing. For some reason, my laptop doesn't pick it up.
Oh, I can hear you laugh.
Yeah, same.
I don't. Okay. It was just something I kind of noticed when I played back last stream. I'm like, wow, I hope that everyone realized I was having a good time.
Yes, yes.
I have a really, really, it's professional audio setup right now. I'm just speaking into my phone.
Okay, okay. Hey guys, Rudy ate at a pizza parlor called Eden Shut Up. There.
Really?
Yeah.
Eaton, shut up.
Yes.
Are you sure they're in Italy and not New Jersey?
You would think. With a name like
It's
that.
Eden. Like, Eden, shut up.
I'll have the one fuck you special.
See,
Yeah.
I've been in New Jersey for about 4 hours, but at Newark Airport.
You're laughing. A
It
man
was
stalked by a pen pal,
condolences.
and you're laughing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it was the really bad winter of 2009, and I was stuck at Newark Airport while I was trying to fly down to Florida, and I was trapped in a bunch of snow.
oh jeez. Wait, I'm sorry. Rudy said the pizza itself was called Eat and Shut Up.
Oh.
But
Oh.
Kenzie, knowing that's where you are, I'm going to have to come and use your home as a strike point because I want to go meet Ethan Van Sciver.
I would say yes, but my dog hates people, for as cute as he looks.
Won't
So
even know
you
I'm
really
there. Just if you see police cars come and know that, I will immediately run away, so you won't have to deal with it.
okie doke. And Bagel, you're a man being stuck by a pen pal laughing. Did you not watch last stream where he's just in the middle of reading? It gets to a point where the mother's scolding the two kids, and he child abuse.
You have no evidence of that.
I will clip it.
I didn't know you could do that.
I don't know if I can either, but I will.
Excellent.
Like,
You know, I'm not even
I'll
going to.
Discord and be like, all right, go to this point in time. He says it.
I'm not even going to protest since, like, since you admitted it like that. Just props to you. Okay, Bagel,
I
you're
don't
in
do
you're
this
in New
at
Jersey
all
too.
for
That
any-
that if the police come for me, then I'll use your place as the safe house.
Wait, what?
I'll go to New Jersey. Kenzie, your place will be my strike point to go and stalk Ethan Van Sciver. If the police come after me, then I'll run to Bagels to be the safe house.
Ah. Hey, Bagel's in Jersey too.
Yes.
I guess when you have Bagel in the name, it should be a given.
Oh boy.
bagels.
All right. So shall we get started?
Yes.
No Raptor, Nazi Josh is not best Josh.
Yeah. Let's not talk
So-
about that, Josh.
So regarding voices, I can't remember what. I remember the story, but I don't remember with like voices and stuff. Do you know which voices Kenzie and I will be doing?
Um.
I remember you took Josh, Gemma, last week.
Yes.
And I was kind of just the miscellaneous female voices.
Yes, I was Mom and Josh.
And
Yeah,
I was Mrs. Maggie and that bitch Samantha.
fucking car seats.
You know, to this day, I bet her seats are still getting upholstered.
Yep. Well, there are new characters in these chapters. Let's just we'll worry about that when we come to it.
Cool.
Right.
All right. So, we are now on chapter 5, Screens. At the end of the summer, between kindergarten and first grade, I caught the stomach flu. The sickest I had ever been up to that point was the week in kindergarten that I had been stricken with a sore throat, but the stomach flu was an entirely different challenge. It has all of the components of the regular flu. However, with the stomach flu, you throw up into a bucket and not the toilet because you are sitting on it. The sickness gets purged from both ends. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what my viewers wanted to hear as they tune in. I stayed in bed for almost 10 days, and just as it seemed that my body had fought the plague into submission, it was granted an extension, albeit in a different form. One morning, just a day or two before school resumed, I woke up and began to panic, thinking for a moment that I had gone blind. My eyes were so fused together by the dried mucus generated during the night that I couldn't open them. I had to pry my eyelids apart with my fingers. I had pink eye. When I started first grade, it was with a kink in my neck, caused by more than a week of bed rest, and two swollen, bloodshot eyes. Either of these things individually might have been manageable, but as I walked through the door and into the school, there was a noticeable quieting in my peers' chatter as they looked at my infected eyes and awkward, hunched comportment. Josh had been assigned to another group, which I had known about for weeks, but eating schedules weren't determined that far in advance. It wasn't until my class was brought to the lunchroom that I discovered that Josh had also been assigned to a different eating period. So, due to my affliction and the absence of my table mate, in a cafeteria bursting with 200 kids, I still had a table all to myself. It's a bit poetic that it is so easy to take advantage of those who have no advantages to begin with. After the first several days of first grade, I started bringing spare food in my backpack that I would take into the bathroom to eat after lunch, since my school meals were usually confiscated by older kids who knew that I wouldn't stand up to them since no one would stand with me. This dynamic persisted even after my condition cleared up, since no one wants to be friends with a kid who gets bullied, lest they have some of that aggression directed toward themselves. There's an expression that says you have to have money to make money, and while friendship itself is surely priceless, making friends seems to operate by the same rules. The fact that I was relatively personable in class did little to counter the fact that most of my classmates recognized me as the kid who sat alone at lunch. I was unable to make friends in class because I was unable to make friends at lunch, and the opposite held true as well. This loop fed itself for weeks. In kindergarten, most of my peers had grouped off with several friends, rather than pairing off with only one, like I had. This meant that in the first grade, it would have been difficult to insert myself into their fold, even if I hadn't been a leper. With no friends, my ability to make any was jeopardized, and as the bullying grew more frequent, potential acquaintances grew more distant. I came to dread going to school in the morning, to the point that there was more than one occasion where I cried when my alarm clock signaled the start of my day. My only reprieve was waiting for the school bus with Josh in the afternoon so that we could discuss our continued navigation of the tributary, but this simply wasn't enough to make the rest of the day bearable. Finally, and unexpectedly, my situation was improved by the intervention of a kid named Alex. Alex was in the third grade, though he was bigger than most of the other kids in any grade at my school. His greater size wasn't just vertical. Alex was fairly overweight. His parents had attempted to hide their son's mess by outfitting him with oversized shirts that buttoned up the front, and didn't cling to his body so easily or so tightly. However, when he sat down, the fabric would be stressed, and the openings between some of the buttons would purse, and would reveal the fat on his stomach that the baggy shirt was meant to cover. Of course, no one ever pointed this out to Alex. Gemma, would you like to take the next 3 pages?
Yes. Yes, I will. Despite his intimidating size, Alex always seemed nice enough. I never saw him pick on another kid, and he didn't seem to be self-conscious about anything, one of the benefits of not having to worry about being bullied. But 5 minutes into lunch, sometime during the third week of school, he walked up to my table with his tray and sat down. There were several times when it looked as if he was about to say something, but there were always false starts. He left when lunch was over, and the process began anew the next day. I was curious as to why he had suddenly sidled up next to me, but I was hesitant to bring it up. His company had put an immediate end to the shortage of my food supply, and I would be a fool to do anything to jeopardize this new relationship. Ignoring my curiosity, I tried to strike up a conversation with him several times, but he would only ever respond with enough effort to close whatever subject I had broached. I had never spoken with him at length, and so I was having difficulty determining whether he was distracted by something in his thoughts, or if he was simply slow. He wasn't being rude in his curt replies, but they left no room for an actual dialogue to develop. Against my better judgment, I confronted him on the third day. He sat across from me silently eating his lunch. He seemed at a loss initially, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he knew I would ask, but had not yet thought of how he would respond. After fumbling and stammering for a moment, he simply blurted it out. He had a crush on Josh's sister, Veronica. Veronica was in 4th grade and was probably the prettiest girl in the school. Even as a 6-year-old who fully endorsed the notion that girls were disgusting, I still knew how pretty Veronica was. When she was in the 3rd grade, Josh told me, 2 boys had actually gotten into a physical fight because of her. It erupted out of an argument concerning the significance of the messages she had written in their yearbooks. One of the boys eventually hit the other in the forehead with the corner of one of the yearbooks, and the wound required stitches to close. Well, not one of those 2 boys, Alex too, wanted her to like him and confessed that he knew that Josh and I were best friends. Although he had difficulty articulating it, probably because it was an embarrassing request. I gathered that he had hoped that I would convey his ostensibly philanthropic deed to Veronica, and that she would presumably be so moved by his selflessness that she'd take an interest in him. If I talked him up to Veronica, he would continue to sit with me for as long as I needed him to. Because this was during the time when Josh mostly stayed at my house navigating the tributary with me, I didn't have the chance to bring it up to Veronica, because I simply didn't see her. Even if I had, I'm not sure what I could have said that would have worked in his favour, aside from simply saying that he was a nice guy. But I needed to convey the message. It seemed like Alex had taken a liking to me and might continue to sit with me regardless of whether I held up my end of the agreement, but whether or not he realised it, he had done me a tremendous favour, and I wanted to return it. I told Josh about the situation, but he just made fun of Alex. Part of me understood why Josh found it funny, but I insisted that he talk to Veronica since Alex had done a nice thing for me. He told me that he would tell his sister because I wanted him to, though I doubted that he would. Josh was annoyed that people seemed to be so taken with his sister. I remember him calling her an ugly crow. I never said anything to Josh, but I remember wanting to say, even then, that Veronica was pretty and would one day be beautiful. I was right. When I was 14, I was a freshman at high school that was comprised of two distinct populations of students. The majority of the students lived in the district for that school, and they attended it as regular pupils. But there was a small percentage of the student body that commuted to the school and to attend a completely separate program with a fundamentally different curriculum that was designed to prepare students for college. I was in this program. The school was located in a predominantly poor area, and as is often the case for whatever reason, this poverty was coexistent with an underperformance of many of the school's general population. Some of these students had full-time jobs by their junior year, whilst others seemed like simply elected not to come to class. As a result, the school as a whole was a failing one. Because the collective grade of the school was an F, its funding from the state had been significantly reduced, which meant that it became more difficult to get the necessary resources to raise the grade of the school. As a last resort out of this true catch-22, my program was placed in the school to raise the overall grade without having to address any of the actual reasons why the school was failing to begin with.
And Kenzie, would you like to take the next three?
Sure. I had hoped that the fact that my program attracted kids from all over the city would mean that Josh and I might finally attend the same school again, since it had been 10 years since we were in the same class, not to mention the same school. But there was a good deal of stigma attached to attending a program like this, and so I understood why Josh apparently decided to attend his district school. Other kids from my first elementary school, however, had made different choices. For the most part, this common origin didn't translate into easier conversation like I had expected it might, but it did allow me to befriend someone from my elementary school that I hadn't actually known that well when I was a kid, though I remembered him very distinctly. When I saw him, I recognized him immediately. Although his hair was longer than it had been back then, his face hadn't changed that much, and I could still picture him crying and pouting over our kindergarten teacher after our kindergarten teacher scolded him for releasing his balloon too early. It was Chris. He had apparently forgotten about that episode, and when I brought it up, he attempted to deny it coolly, but laughed so hard that he completely confirmed it. The memory of him clutching the empty air with his tight fist held just out of frame of the class photograph catalyzed a fit of laughter in the both of us. I got to know him and his friends Ryan and Adam fairly well. We didn't have that much in common in the end, but we had similar senses of humor and we all liked movies, and that was enough. As a result of one of our common interests, we had taken to frequenting special screenings of old movies at a place we had come to call the Dirt Theater. It was probably nice at some point, but time and neglect had weathered the place severely. I'm not sure if the building was built as a theater or if it had been repurposed. The floors were level, and rather than rows of fixed seats, there were movable tables and chairs. This latter fact was actually the attempted selling point of the business. Their portable furniture was featured in every commercial and advertisement. The interior layout was so bad that when the theater was even partially full, there were very few places you could sit and see the whole screen. In some of the theaters, there were actually support columns in the middle of the room that blocked entire portions of the screen if you were unlucky enough to sit anywhere behind them. Despite this, the theater was still open, and I imagine that there were 3 reasons for this. 1, the tickets and concessions were cheap. 2, they showed a different cult movie on Friday and Saturday twice a month at midnight. And 3, they sold beer to underage kids during the midnight showings. I went for the first 2. Yeah, right. The theater showed movies during the day, ones that had just left real theaters, and as near as I could tell, the day showings accounted for the majority of the Dirt Theater's business. But in all the times that I had gone to see a matinee there, not once had a movie ever started on time. In fact, there had been a time when the movie had started 20 minutes late, and the projectionist had actually sped up the film so that the schedule wouldn't be compromised. Despite all this, the midnight showings always started at exactly midnight. It was a strange business model, but one that must have worked because, as far as I know, the theater is still open for business. In my sophomore year of high school, when I was 15, Chris, Adam, Brian, and I went to the Dirt Theater to see Scanners by David Cronenberg for $1. We had arrived with enough time to secure virtually whatever seats we wanted, but we sat at the very back of the theater. I wanted to sit closer to the front for a good view, but since Ryan had driven us, the choice was his. Rather than a good view, we were left with virtually no view at all, but for some reason Adam and I were the only ones who seemed bothered by this. There were no previews before the midnight feature, so much of the audience would just slide in close to showtime. Just a few minutes before the movie started, a group of attractive girls walked into the steadily filling theater. Whatever conversations my friends and I were having stalled and quickly died away as we watched them make their way to the seats they had chosen. Chris and the other 2 in our party made unsavory comments while I sat silently and watched the girls continue on their path. Each of the girls was attractive in her own way, but whatever beauty the other girls might have had, it was eclipsed by the girl with the dirty blonde hair, even though I'd only caught a glimpse of her profile. As she turned to move her seat, I caught a full view of her face. It gave me the feeling of butterflies in my stomach. It was Veronica.
Alright, I'll take over for the next 3. I hadn't seen her in a long time. Josh and I saw progressively less of one another after we snuck out to my old house that night when we were 10, and usually when I would visit him, she'd be out with friends. But here she was. Of all the places she could have been, she was sitting right in front of me at the worst movie theater in the city. I couldn't stop looking at her. While everyone stared at the screen, I stared at Veronica. Okay, there. Only looking away when the feeling that I was being a creep overcame me, but that feeling would quickly subside, and my eyes would return to her. She really was beautiful, just like I thought she'd be when I was a kid.
Simp! I had to.
Simp.
When the credits started to roll, my friends got up and left the room. There was only one exit, and they didn't want to be trapped waiting for the crowd to clear. I lingered in hopes of catching Veronica's attention, though I had no idea what I should say. As she and her friends walked by, I took a chance. I'm just picturing him like leaning against the pillar, like legs crossed, hands in his pockets, like staring off into nothing, wearing a pair of sunglasses. Hey. Hey, Veronica? She turned toward me, looking a little startled.
We haven't
Who's playing
chosen
Veronica?
any roles.
Kenzie.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah?
I got out of my seat and stepped a little into the light that was coming in through the open door. It's me, Josh's old friend from way back. How have you been? Her mind seemed to search for the right frame of reference until finally it clicked.
Oh my god, hey! It's been so long!
She motioned to her friends that she'd be out in a second. Yeah, a few years at least. Not since the last time I stayed over with Josh. How's he doing anyway?
Oh, that's right. I remember all you guys' names. Do you still play Ninja Turtles with your friends?
She laughed a little, and I blushed. No, I'm not a kid anymore. Me and my friends play X-Men now. I was really hoping she'd laugh. She did.
You're cute. Do you come to these movies every time?
What did she say? Does she really think I'm cute? Does she just mean I'm funny? Does she think I'm attractive? I was still reeling from what she said when I suddenly realized that she had asked me a question. My mind grasped for what it was. Yeah, I said much too loudly. Yeah, I try to anyway. What about you?
I come every now and then. My boyfriend didn't like these movies, but we just broke up, so I plan on coming more often.
And you just know he's doing like a little victory dance in his head. I felt my
He's
heart
trying,
flutter a bit. What's that?
he's trying to like fight not to sniff her hair.
Oh god.
Oh Lord.
I felt my heart flutter a
Sorry.
bit. I tried to be casual, but I failed. Oh well, that's cool. Now that you guys broke up, uh, I just meant that you'd be able to come more often. She laughed again. I tried to recover. So, are you coming the week after next? They're supposed to show Day of the Dead. She looked a little hesitant, so I pressed further and pretended to be charming. I think we've gotten to know each other pretty well in the last few minutes. I'm pretty positive you'd like the movie, especially if you went to the Saturday showing. She chuckled.
Well, in that case, I'll be here.
I wanted so badly to know if she was coming because I had asked her or if she had already intended to attend, but I convinced myself that it didn't matter. She would be there either way. I was about to suggest that maybe we should sit together when she quickly closed the space between us and hugged me.
It was really good to see you.
She said with her arms around me. I was trying to think of what to say when I realized that my biggest problem was that I had forgotten how to talk. Luckily, Chris, uh, who could who I could hear approaching from the hallway, came in and spoke for me while Veronica incapacitated me with her embrace. Gemma, do you want to take Chris since you haven't had a character yet?
Sure. Dude! You know the movie's over, right? Let's get the fuck out of. Oh, baby!
You know what I also really want? I just want, before she leaves, I want the protagonist to be like, oh, by the way, Veronica, I know this really great guy named Alex. He's a bit fat, but nice guy.
Yeah.
Gives great hugs.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah, I'm only like, what, like 9 years late on this. But, and with
They
her
still meet
hugging,
up for lunch, like every Sunday.
yeah. And with her hugging him, though, I'm just imagining, Kif on the Mars episode of Futurama. Did we just make love?
Uh.
Only if his gloves are off.
Yeah. It's like the posters always said, no glove, no love. Verona let go and said that she'd see me next time. She was played out of the room by the porn music Chris was making with his mouth. I was furious, but it dissipated as soon as I heard Veronica laughing in the lobby. I mean, since we made the young version of Chris Chan, I can understand him being furious.
Did you just get hugged by a girlfriend-free or boyfriend-free girl?
That was supposed to be my experience.
All these jerks. We can't
Not
be
a
friends
jerks and
anymore.
jerk ups.
Oh, did we not say though that that the protagonist is wearing a pickle suit?
And
On
he's
the way.
also black.
Yeah.
And Veronica came over, and with the man in the pickle suit.
On the ride home, Adam asked
Pickle Man
me,
tricked me again.
"What?"
The pickle man tricked me again. That is an actual quote.
Yep. On the ride home, Adam asked me how I knew the girl. I explained that, oh, that's a typo. I explained that she was my best friend's sister. And this caused an immediate uproar. Chris might have remembered Josh, but the reaction made me glad that I hadn't mentioned who my friend was, since that would have only served to intensify Chris' jibing disapproval. I attempted to defend myself by saying that we weren't really good friends anymore since we hardly ever spoke, but as soon as I said this, I felt terrible. There was a lull in the conversation. I think they understood that it had gone in a bad direction for me. Chris attempted to fix this by leaning over the center console of the car and making kissing sounds at Ryan. The tension broke, and my feelings of guilt began to evaporate as my thoughts returned to Veronica. I spent the next week and a half in impatient anticipation for what I was planning on considering my first date, even though it probably wouldn't be a date at all. I thought about what I would say, whether I would try to sit next to her, and what might happen if we somehow wound up alone together, without our respective groups of friends. I even thought about what I would wear, which was not something I had ever really put much consideration into. Day of the Dead couldn't come soon enough. Just a few days before the movie, however, the whole plan began to unravel. Ryan told me that he and his family were going out of town, so he wouldn't be able to drive us. Neither Chris nor Adam had cars, so as a last resort, I asked my mom if she could take me. So, Ryan is the Manny of their group, the only one who got a driver's license at 16. I felt nervous.
I got mine at 19.
Isn't
Jeez.
he 14? The protagonist?
I think 15 at this point.
I don't know.
I felt nervous as I walked into the living room to ask her because she seemed to strongly prefer that I go out with a group of friends if I was going to go out at all. However, I think the reason I was nervous was that this would leave me without any kind of buffer between Veronica and myself. No buffer except for the one offered by her friends, but that provided no comfort to me. Talking to one girl made me nervous enough. Gemma, would you like to take the next?
Cool, yeah, no problem. When I asked my mother, she responded by telling me that she would think about it, but I persisted, and she noticed the desperation in my voice. She asked why I wanted to go so badly since I'd seen the movie before, and I hesitated before saying that I was hoping to see a girl there. She smiled and asked playfully if she knew the girl, remembering the reactions of my friends the night I had to run into Veronica. I was tempted to lie, but I thought my mum might not think it was such a big deal. I reluctantly told her that it was Veronica. The smile disappeared from her face, and she coldly said, "No." When I asked her what the problem was, she told me that I should keep nagging her if my goal was to stay home all weekend. So I backed down. Having reached an impasse, I decided that I would call Veronica to see if she could pick me up. If she said no, then at least my curiosity regarding whether she was only going to the theatre because I asked her to would be satisfied. There was still the matter of her actually picking me up at my house and how my mom would react to that. But I'd worry about that problem when it actually was a problem.
I'm sorry, I just gotta say, I imagine like the mother is like some like old time Southern mother, like, no, she is a low class whore. You will not be seen with her.
Veronica's racked up a reputation around town.
Yes, and I believe the term is village bicycle.
That Veronica goes out with her skirt halfway up her ankles. I had no idea if Veronica was still lived at home, but I figured it was still worth a try. When I picked up the phone and dialed the first number, I realised that Josh might answer. I hadn't talked to him in almost 3 years, and if he answered, I obviously couldn't ask to talk to his sister. I felt guilty for calling to speak with Veronica and not Josh, and I felt even worse because up until that moment, that phone number had always been Josh's number, but I hadn't even thought of him as I started dialing. I tried to think of the last time that I had talked to Josh. For a moment I thought that it was just a few months after my 12th birthday, but I realised that I hadn't actually spoken with him then. I remembered that his parents had called and spoken with my mother. She told me that they were updating their address book and just wanted to confirm that we had the same number. I asked my mum if Josh wanted to speak with me, and my mum looked sad and said that he hadn't. As I clutched the phone, I held my thumb over the buttons. Resentment started to build in me as a way to suffocate the guilt. Josh hadn't called me in years either, even after he insisted that he would. There was no reason to feel bad about any of this. I dialed the rest of the number that was still embedded in my muscle memory from having dialed it so often when we were children. After several rings, someone finally picked up, and when I heard the click of the connecting call, I felt my heart rate accelerate. It wasn't Josh. I felt a mixture of both relief and disappointment. I realized in that second that I really missed Josh. After this weekend, I would call him, but this was my only chance to see if Veronica could or would take me, so I asked for her. The person told me that I had dialed the wrong number. I asked her who I was speaking with, and she told me her name was Claire. I repeated the number back to her, and she confirmed. Claire said they must have changed their number, and I agreed. I apologized for the disturbance and hung up, and as soon as the phone was back on the receiver, I became intensely sad because now I couldn't contact Josh even if I wanted to. I felt terrible for having been afraid that he might answer the phone. He had been my very best friend. Time and distance can wreak havoc on a friendship if you let it, and we had both been complicit in the atrophying of our relationship. I felt selfish for attempting to force the blame onto Josh just to justify my desire to see his sister. I realised that the only way I could be put back in touch with him would be through Veronica, so now, not that I needed one, I had another reason to see her. I told my mum the Friday before the movie that I was no longer concerned with going, but was hoping she could drop me off at Chris's house the next day. She had met Chris several times and was fond of him, and since she no longer had to contend with my requests to go to the movies, she relented and dropped me off the following day, just a couple of hours before the movie.
Yeah, because, plans like this always end so well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Back to when he called the wrong number, I just was really hoping he'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to wait a minute. Josh's mother's name is Claire.
Chris didn't know
by his best
what was that?
friend's mom.
It's like I just knew her as mom.
Hi, Mrs. Josh's mom.
You know what? That'll have to do. Mom. Possibly deceased.
Chris didn't know about my plan until I arrived at his house that evening. After we ate dinner with his parents, we went back to his room, and I explained my intentions to him. Since Chris only lived about a half-mile away from the theatre, my plan was to walk there from his house. His family went to church early on Sundays, so his parents would go to sleep early that night. He pretended to be offended that I was using him as part of my scheme, but it was clearly clear that he didn't care. Initially, I was apprehensive. Oh,
I was gonna say.
Is that it?
Yeah, and I just gotta say though, when your friend acts like he doesn't care about something like that, he's probably offended.
Yeah.
I don't remember Chris being mentioned being a girl. So you want me to read?
I mean, Chris Chan is a girl now, apparently.
That is opening a whole can of worms that we should save for another stream.
Yes. Yes, please read, Kenzie. I'm gonna shut up now.
Because I have words. Okay. Initially, I was apprehensive about telling him that I didn't want him to come with me, but whether he was simply doing me a favor or was telling the truth, before I could even bring it up, he volunteered to stay behind since he had planned on chatting with a girl he met online. Chris he really is Chris.
Yeah, I met this girl online. I think she might be the one.
Her name is Julie. Oh god.
I got back to Chris's house late that night and had to ask him why he had his pants down and was shoving his medallion up his ass.
I hate that the worst fake girlfriend is the only one that I can remember the name of. It's just so awful.
It really is.
Chris reminded me that Veronica was a senior in high school and that I was guaranteed to make a fool of myself. Well, look who's talking, Chris. Sorry. He said that the walk back to his house would be even lonelier after she laughed in my face when I tried to kiss her. I told him not to electrocute himself when he tried to have sex with his computer. These jokes write themselves.
They really do.
I'm sorry, I know we're trying to keep it serious. This is a horror story. I left his house at 11:15 that night. I tried to pace myself so I'd get there just a little before the movie. I was going by myself, so I didn't want to just loiter impatiently outside of the building. On the way to the theater, I figured that if Veronica showed up at all, it would be too lucky for us to arrive at the same time, so I debated whether I should wait outside or just go in. If I went in first, then she might not notice me when she entered the dark theater, but the same was true for me if I waited for her and she was already inside. It also occurred to me that she would probably be with her friends again, and I needed to figure out how to insert myself into their group without being scoffed at for being too young. The grass on the side of the road where I walked was ankle high, and as my shoes moved against it, I could feel the occasional mist of water from the afternoon's rain curling up and colliding with my dangling hands. The sky had cleared itself of clouds in the evening, but the cool air still lingered, and this made the walk more pleasant, despite my insecurities and uncertainties. As I was grappling with the decision whether to wait for Veronica or into the theater once I got there, I noticed that the steady stream of streaking car lights that had been overtaking me had been replaced by a single, constant spotlight that refused to pass. The road wasn't illuminated by streetlights, which was why I had been walking in the grass to begin with. I was already about 2 feet away from the road, but the thought that it might not be far enough for a nervous motorist, I stepped a little more to my right and craned my neck over my left shoulder, ready to flag the person to pass, and I heard the squeaking of old tire brakes as I adjusted my posture. A car had stopped about 15 feet behind me. I stopped walking and turned around to face the car. All I could see were the violently bright headlights that were cutting through the otherwise um, anyone else
Stygian.
Stygian surroundings. I thought that it might be one of Chris's parents. Maybe they had come to check in on us and had seen that I was gone. It wouldn't have taken much pressing for Chris to confess. In fact, he might have done it gladly, since it would be even more humorous to him if my big date had been intercepted by his mom. I took one step toward the car, and it broke its paws and started driving toward me at a slow pace. As it passed me, I saw that it wasn't Chris's parents' car, or any car that I recognized for that matter. I tried to see the driver, but it was too hard to see inside the car at all since my pupils had shrunk when faced with the blinding headlights just moments before. They adjusted enough that I could see a tremendous crack in the back window of the car as it drove away.
Asshole.
I muttered. After a few more minutes of walking, I laughed a little now that the urgency of the situation had passed. I could see myself doing something like that to a pedestrian. Sometimes it could be fun to scare other people. I often hide around corners and jump at my mom after all. I timed the walk correctly and got there about 10 minutes before the movie started. There wasn't a line, so I approached the ticket seller and bought a pass for myself. He was overweight and sweating so profusely that beads of perspiration were sliding off the top of his hairless scalp and down the stringy ponytail he had fashioned with the hair that still grew on the back of his head. When he handed me my ticket, it was damp. After about a minute, I went back to the counter, slid another dollar bill through the slot, and bought a ticket for Veronica. As the employee handed me my other half of the cheap raffle tickets they used as stubs, he snorted and said that I must really like this movie to see it twice in one weekend and buy extra tickets. I walked away even more surprised that the Dirt Theater was still in business with him handling the cash and counting it.
Yeah, I just gotta interrupt and say, like, how much of a fucking virgin do you have to be so clueless like that? Oh, you bought 2 tickets? Must be that you're seeing it alone twice.
Is this just turning into an episode of How Many Chris Chan Jokes Can We Make?
Pretty much, it seems like.
I had decided to wait outside around 11:57, since that would give me time to find Veronica inside if she was already seated. As I was reconsidering the possibility that she might not show, I saw her. She was beautiful, and she was alone. I waved to her and walked to close the distance. She smiled and asked if my friends were already inside. I said that they weren't coming and realized that it might seem like I was trying to make this a date. I felt my palms start to sweat inside my pockets as I rubbed the already damp ticket between my fingers and debated whether or not I should just let her buy her own now. Despite the fact that I'd come alone, she didn't seem bothered. nor was she bothered when I pressed my luck further and handed her the ticket that I already bought for her. When she looked at me quizzically, I said, "Don't worry, I'm rich." She laughed and we went inside.
Alright, I'll take over now.
Okay.
I bought us one popcorn and 2 drinks, and spent most of the movie debating whether or not I should time reaching my hand into the popcorn bag when she did so that our hands might touch. Having seen the movie already last year, I didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, I donated it to Veronica in the form of sidelong looks and occasional comments. For the past 2 weeks, I had played out cliché scenarios in my mind wherein she would get scared and cling to me. That didn't happen, but I thought that probably never really happened anyway. Not when you want it to. I can say that from experience. Aside from my unfortunate interruption, where I had to run out of the theater and find somewhere that would hopefully sound like Chris's house to take a call from my mum, there were no awkward moments during the movie. Veronica seemed to enjoy the film, and before I knew it, it was over. We didn't linger in the theater, and because this was a midnight showing and the theater was closing, we couldn't loiter in the lobby. So we walked outside. The parking lot of the theater was big because it connected with the mall that had gone out of business years before. We stood and talked for a long time as the rest of the audience drove away from the theater. Not wanting the night to be over just yet, I continued the conversation while casually walking toward the old mall, away from where I thought Veronica had parked. Since she wasn't scared during the movie, I thought to tell her a story I had heard about this mall. As I began, as I began the tale, I looked back and saw that her car wasn't the only one left in the parking lot. The other one had a large crack in the back window. I stood and stared at it, puzzled and unnerved.
So there was a robbery?
Veronica said in an attempt to put me back on the story. Right, I continued. I tried to put the car out of my mind, and we resumed our walk and left the theater out of sight. Well, kinda. So, the mall closed like 5 years ago, but way back this was the place where everyone would come to hang out and shop.
As opposed to all the other awesome places in this town.
She interjected sarcastically. Damn right. Anyway, everyone thinks that this place just went out of business, but that's not true. What happened was that at some point the manager, or whoever, noticed that a lot of the food inventory was going missing. I don't mean like candy bars, I'm talking about whole freezers full of food. So he put up all these security cameras everywhere, to try to catch who was taking it. But the cameras never showed anything. They'd be on all night, pointed at the freezers, but in the morning, they'd open them up and all the food would be gone, and there'd be this huge mess.
Spooky.
She jibed. Just hang on. Women always interrupting. So the owner guy hires these two security guards to stay overnight and keep an eye out. The first couple of nights are no problem, right? No food is missing, everything's cool. But then one night, the guard hears this huge crash coming from across the empty mall, so he runs over to see what's going on. Then he hears these screams. The smile was disappearing from Veronica's face. It's his partner, but he can't tell where the screams are coming from exactly. On the video, it's just him running back and forth, and he's shouting something, but the cameras don't have sound, so no one knows what he's saying.
How do you know all this then?
Just a second. So eventually the guard runs up to one of the freezers, the one behind the Chinese food place. Well, he opens it up. He takes a look inside and backs away, and then just runs out of the mall. He didn't even lock the doors. The owner comes back in the morning, finds his mall unlocked, and no sign of the security guards. He checks the tapes and doesn't understand what happened, but he sees who left the door unlocked. After he checks the freezer and sees the mess and the missing food, he calls the police and sends them after the guard who just ran out. They find him at his house, just locked in his room, shaking. They ask him what happened, and the guy won't talk. They ask him about the food. The guy just keeps shaking. Finally, they take him into the station for more questioning. The police have a theory that these two guys were involved somehow, so they start really interrogating the guy, but he just won't talk. Where's your partner? They ask him. What happened to your partner? Where'd he take the food? But the guy won't crack. Finally, they start threatening him with jail time, and he just breaks down. The guy says he saw his partner being pulled through the big drain in the floor of the freezer. The police are like, pulled? Pulled by what? The guy just starts crying and screams, a monster! They do an investigation but never find the partner. But when they open the grate on the floor of the freezer, they saw the pipe was gone, and it was just this big hole. The investigation shuts them all down for months, and the owner goes bankrupt.
What about the guy? The security guard.
Veronica asked, her voice trembling a little. He winds up in the insane asylum down south. He draws these pictures of the monster during free time, but they always look different. I started trying to guide us to one of the giant windows that stretched from the foundation to the roof of the mall. But here's the thing. They never found any monster, but they did find all kinds of boxes and big plastic wrappers in that hole under the freezer. And they found the missing guard's flashlight down there too. It was smashed to pieces. We were right in front of the window. But the craziest part is that they just gave up. They just shut down the mall and locked it up forever. They say that if you're quiet and you look for long enough, you can still see the monster walking around the mall now since there's no one to bother it. But what's weird is that everyone who's ever seen it tells a different story of what it looks like. Gemma, do you want to take over?
Cool, yep. I pressed my hands in C shapes against the window and peered through the dirty glass. Veronica followed my lead. We waited silently for almost a minute, our breath fogging against the window. Right as she was in the middle of saying that she didn't see anything, I kicked the window hard with my foot, and the whole pane vibrated. Veronica shrieked briefly and tore away from the window, grabbing my arm as she moved back.
You jerk!
She yelled with a smile growing on her lips.
What? Didn't you see it?
I started laughing.
I'm sorry.
She playfully shoved me. I had heard that story so many times from Chris, but the window kick was my idea. Veronica seemed to like horror movies, so I was hoping that she would appreciate the story, and I was happy that she took the joke well.
I just gotta say real quick, I didn't make up any of the story, but the idea of kicking a window, yeah, genius addition there.
Yeah, that's what made it. That's what made it. As the laughter and what?
Sorry, Darius. Now I'm imagining Manny sat in the theater, face disgusted as a fat neckbeard clings to him in fear while they're watching Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, no, it was actually, there was a girl I liked, and, my friends were trying to get us to, start going out together. So we all went to see the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And, they got me to sit next to her, of course, try to make this happen. But, another friend of mine who is terrified of horror movies sat on my other side. So anytime anything remotely frightening happened, she was clinging to my arm, cutting off circulation, she left cuts from her nails in my arm, and she would not let go.
This.
It's I was hoping it would happen with, this girl here, but I get scaredy cat instead. What?
Cock blocker.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay.
Okay.
I was so hoping it was a male friend, too.
No, actually, you see, funny story, that was also my birthday, but all of my guy friends decide, sorry man, we know that we said that we'd do this 2 weeks ago, but, the guy at the game shop said that he's having a poker night, so we're gonna do that instead. It's oh, gee, yeah, thanks guys. On my birthday and
so
when
you're the one boy guy in a group full of girls.
Yeah. So at least I looked like a pimp, but...
Yeah.
Bye, Cope.
Cope.
He's gone.
Oh, he's leaving.
How long had he been standing there?
For about 2 minutes.
Just long enough to hear you call yourself a pimp.
Yeah. I'm not going to hear the end of that one.
Probably not. Where was I?
Yeah, please keep reading. I'm gonna mute my mic for a while.
Oh, by the way, has anyone been hearing my dog barking in the background? Because I can mute myself when I'm not reading.
I have
No.
not.
Okay, just checking.
As the laughter and false hostility abated, my mind returned to the car with the cracked window. Suddenly, uneasiness turned to understanding and amusement. That makes a lot of sense. The driver of the car works here and must have figured out I was on my way to the movie, I thought. Injecting real horror into the life of a horror fan seemed like an obvious move. That was exactly what I had done. With things more relaxed, we continued walking around the mall and started talking about the movie we'd just seen. I told her that I thought Day of the Dead was better than Dawn of the Dead, but she refused to agree. Well, she's wrong.
Yeah, she
I
is
told
objectively wrong.
Yeah, Day of the Dead is much better. I told her she doesn't know anything. I told her about when I called her old number and about my dilemma about who would answer the phone. She didn't find it as funny as I did, but she took my phone and put her number in it. She commented that it might be the worst cell phone she'd ever seen.
But who was
Her,
phone?
her evaluation wasn't rescinded when I told her I couldn't even receive pictures on it.
At least it plays really good music.
I said. She looked at me quizzically and handed my phone back to me. I shook the phone rhythmically, and some chip of plastic or a stray metal screw that had come loose inside the phone casing began to rattle around inside the phone.
I'm sorry, I was like,
Definitely
Gemma,
Nokia.
did you just turn this like French? Tray metal.
Tray metal. I danced in a self-mocking fashion briefly, and then tried to call her so she'd have my number, but I had no service. I power cycled the phone and took advantage of the high connection I always had when it was first turned on. The call went through and I watched her cancel it.
Hey, I was going to leave you a voicemail. I had an important message for you.
She laughed.
Oh yeah, what was it?
Well, maybe I don't remember anymore. Should have just let it go to voicemail.
I messed up the setting on this thing. It never goes to my voicemail. It just rings forever.
Yeah, your phone really sucks.
I said, as I shook mine like a maraca.
Nokia. Definitely a Nokia.
We both laughed. I watched as she saved my number. We walked on. She told me that she was graduating, but she hadn't done well in school for the past couple of years, so she wasn't sure if she'd even get into college. She said that she should have gone to the magnet program that I was in, since she might have been in a better spot now if she had. I told her to attach a picture of herself to the college application, and they paired just to go there just so they could look at her.
Simp!
That is a simp move if I've ever
You're
seen one.
fucking simping.
I just imagine him breathing really heavily. You should just attach a picture to your application.
Like the fucking creeper guy from Hey Arnold, the one that Helga always like smashed her.
Brady!
Yeah.
She didn't laugh at that one, and I thought she might be offended. She might have thought I was implying that she couldn't get in based on her intelligence. I nervously glanced at her, and she was just smiling, and even in that poor light I could see that she was blushing. I wanted to hold her hand, but I didn't. As we walked down the final side of the mall, back towards the theatre, I asked her about Josh. I had asked about him when I saw her in the theatre with her friends weeks before, but she had simply brushed it aside, and I let her because I would have talked to her about anything. This time when I asked, she told me that she didn't want to talk about it. I asked her if he was at least doing okay, and she just said,
Sorry, hang on, I'm lost. I need to... Oh, sorry. I don't know.
I figured Josh must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, and I started getting into trouble. I felt bad. I felt guilty. As we approached the parking lot, I noticed that the car with the cracked back window was gone, and that her car was now the only one in the parking lot. I had no idea how long it took to clean up that theatre before it closed, but as consistently dirty as that place was, I wasn't surprised that the employees had already left. Veronica asked me if I needed her to drive me back to Chris's house, and even though I really didn't need her to, I wanted her to. So I lied and said it was a long walk and that I'd appreciate it.
A long walk to Toys R Us. I'm sorry, but
Lol.
Penpal? More like Simpal. I regret everything.
Raptor, come on. You're so much better than that.
Okay, Kenzie, do you want to take over?
Are you okay there?
Yeah, just I hear the disappointment. Like you're always praising Raptor for being the one who doesn't make bad jokes, and now
Yeah,
this.
Raptor is like my anti-pun son, and it's like when finding out my child has been given detention for the first time.
And Gemma's just standing there outside the window. Hey, yes, yes, a new one.
No, she's lit it.
Yes.
She's cloaked in like a black robe. Good. Good.
Let the puns flow through you.
Raptor, do not listen to her.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
No, Raptor, do not do it. Do not.
See, I can do read.
Oh, I'm fine. So Raptor, don't do it. Anyway, hang on. I was looking at my phone real quick. Where did we leave off?
I had finished.
Right. I had finished my soda during the movie, and all the walking was putting pressure on my bladder. I knew that I could wait until I was back at Chris's, but I decided that I was going to try and kiss her when she dropped me off, and I didn't want this biological nagging to rush me out of the car. This would be my first kiss. I struggled, but I could think of no ruse to conceal what I needed to do. The theater had closed, so I had only one option. I told her that I was going to go behind the theater to piss, but that I'd be back in 2 shakes. It was obvious that I thought it was hilarious, but she seemed to laugh more at how funny I found it than at how funny it clearly was.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious. Shut up.
On the way toward the theater, I stopped and turned toward her. I told her that I had a weird question, and her interest piqued. I asked her if Josh had ever told her that some kid named Alex had done something nice for me.
I forgot it really is like 9 years too late.
He like has his old home phone number, be like, Alex, guess what?
See
I
that
did you that solid all those years back, but then I fucked her.
even that makes me think of The Office. Alex, you're never gonna guess who I just talked to.
She could still see me. Oh, wait, no. She paused to think for a moment and said that he had. She inquired as to why I'd asked, but I said it was nothing. Josh really was a good friend. When I went to go behind the theater, I realized that there was a chain-link fence extending off of and running parallel to the walls of the building. She could still see me where I was standing, and the fence seemed to stretch on endlessly, so I thought I'd just hop it, duck out of sight, and return as quickly as I could. It may have been too much of an effort, but I thought it was polite. I climbed the fence and walked just a little ways until I was out of sight. I heard Veronica yell for me to not stand on any grates or the mall monster might get me. For a moment, the only sounds were the crickets in the grass behind me and the collision of liquid and cement. Before too long, however... You child!
No, I'm just picturing the only sounds I heard were the crickets. I'm just imagining like crickets standing out in the woods, just like talking about the Riddler.
Hey, do you prefer him as a redhead or brunette?
What the hell are you doing?
Oh, do you just stay here behind this whole time?
Yes.
Now answer my question. Before too long, however, these sounds were overpowered by a noise that I can still hear when it is quiet and there are no other noises to distract my ears. In the distance, I heard a faint but distinct screeching, which quickly subsided, only to be replaced with a cascade of thundering vibrations. I realized quickly enough what it was. It was a car. The growling of the engine got louder, and then I thought, no, not louder, closer. The rumblings intensified. It was growing louder still. I started back toward the fence with haste, but before I could get very far, I heard a brief, truncated scream, and the roar of the engine terminated in a deafening thud. I started running, but after only 2 or 3 steps, I tripped on a loose piece of stone, and I fell hard and fast onto the concrete, my head striking the corner of a bench as I fell. I was dazed for maybe 30 seconds, but the renewed rumbling of the engine drew my senses back, and my equilibrium was restored by my adrenaline. I redoubled my efforts. I was worried that whoever had crashed that car might harass Veronica. Briefly, but forcefully, it occurred to me that we would have to call the police. My, my mom would be contacted because I was a minor. That wasn't how I wanted this night to end. As I was climbing over the fence, I saw that there was still only her car in the parking lot. I didn't see any evidence of a crash. I thought that I might have misjudged its direction or proximity, but I swore I could smell the faint and fleeting aroma of burnt rubber or possibly machine smoke. And this was corroborated by a metallic taste that clung to my tongue. Each of my senses was telling me that something had happened, but my eyes defiantly returned ordinary images. As I ran towards Veronica's yellow car, I had to change my orientation to move around it. Finally, and terribly, my eyes joined my other alerted senses. I saw what the car had hit, and my legs stopped working almost completely. It was Veronica. Her car was sitting between us, and as I closed the distance and walked around it, she came fully into view. Veronica's body lay twisted and crumbled on the black asphalt of the parking lot, her limbs so unnaturally contorted that it looked like a child's discarded wooden art doll, that now showcased a catalog of things the human body cannot do. As I looked at her, I actually found it hard to discern whether she was lying on her back or her stomach, and my vision warped the space around her in an attempt to see a human figure again. This optical illusion made me feel sick with dizziness to the point that I had to close my eyes for a moment for fear of vomiting.
Veronica?
I pleaded with limp, vibrationless vocal cords, the sound nothing more than the broken whisper of a ghost.
Alright, I'll take over again. The bone of her right shin had cut savagely through her jeans and stood erect atop a foundation of blood-stained denim. Her other leg bent out to the side twice, as if she had a second joint in her femur. I traced the figure and saw that her left arm had been dislocated at the shoulder and was wrapped so hard and forcefully around the back of her neck that her hand fell over her right breast with the fingertips nearly touching her navel. I stepped a little closer and knelt down, gravity doing the lion's share of the work as my legs trembled. Her head was craned back and her mouth hung widely open toward the sky, and as I looked into her half-lidded eyes, they stared absently back into mine, as lifeless and cold as a shark's. Blood was pooling around my shoe now. There was so much of it. When you are confronted with something in the world that simply doesn't belong, your mind tries to convince itself that it is dreaming, and to that end it provides you with that distinct sense of all things moving slowly, as if through sap. In that moment, I honestly felt that I would wake up at any minute. But I didn't wake up. I fumbled with my phone to call for help, but I had no signal. I was depressing the power button in the hopes that the signal would return when the phone was turned back on, when I saw Veronica's phone sticking out of what I thought was her front right pocket. I had no choice. Trembling, I reached for her phone and took hold of it. As I slid it out, she moved and gasped so violently for air that it seemed as if she was trying to breathe in the whole world. This startled me so much that I staggered back and fell onto the asphalt with her phone in my hand. She was trying to adjust her body to get it into its natural position, but with every spasm and jerk of her body, I could hear the cracking and grinding of her bones. Without thinking, I scrambled over to her and put my face over hers and pleaded, "Veronica, don't move. Don't move, okay? Just stay still. Don't move. Veronica, please, just don't move." I kept saying it, but the words started to fall apart as tears came streaming down my face. I opened her phone. It still worked. It was still on the screen where she had saved my number, and when I saw that, I felt my heart break a little. I called 911 and waited with her, telling her that she would be okay, and feeling guilty for lying to her every time I said it. When the sound of sirens tore through the air, she seemed to become more alert. She had remained conscious since first coming to, but now more of the light was coming back into her eyes. She was breathing steadily, but it was gurgling, labored breathing. Her brain was still protecting her from pain, though it looked as if it was finally allowing her to become aware that something was terribly wrong with her. Her eyes rolled over to mine, and her lips moved. She was struggling, but I heard her.
Picture. My Biggs. He took it.
I didn't understand what she meant, so I said the only thing I could. I'm so sorry, Veronica. I rode with her in the ambulance where she finally and mercifully lost consciousness. The paramedics asked me several times what happened, but I could only mumble the word, car. I was staring so vacantly that one of the paramedics shined a light in my eyes in an attempt to determine if I had been injured as well. When he returned his attention to Veronica, I felt guilty that he had even had to waste time on me. When we arrived at the hospital, the nurses wheeled Veronica through a set of double doors. As the paramedics rushed by me, one of them put Veronica's purse in my lap. I fidgeted with the leather strap, and sat anxiously yet absently in the waiting room. The blank stare had returned to my eyes as my mind swam in every direction with no guidance or trajectory. The shouts, coughs, cries, and talking of the emergency room waiting area became a dull buzzing in my ear as I went completely numb to all things but one. A phone was vibrating in my pocket. My pulse quickened and my throat dried as I reached my hand into my pants pocket to fish out the phone. My mother was trying to check in on me again. I had no idea how I was going to explain this to her. I was worried about getting in trouble. Those consequences seemed so remote and insignificant to everything now. But what combination of words could I possibly cobble together to explain all this? Between vibrations, I clasped my hand around my phone and pulled it out. It was off. For just a moment, I thought the call had simply stopped, or perhaps my phone had died just then somehow. But this moment of confusion ended as soon as the vibrations began again, still in my pocket. I still had Veronica's phone, and someone was calling it. I felt my eyes begin to water, and I reached into my pocket to retrieve Veronica's phone. I looked at the screen and could see that her dad was calling her. I needed to answer it. I needed to tell him what had happened. Veronica's mom was a nurse. Maybe she could help. I needed to let someone know what was going on. But every time I tried to imagine even a fragment of what I might say, my thoughts would splinter into pieces too small to reassemble. Gemma, do you want to take over? Gemma?
Hi there, sorry. I was like, yeah, I'll do this, but I think afterwards I'm going to have to go because it's getting quite late here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll do my bit and then I'll have to head off.
Sounds
But,
good.
okay. I kept, which bit were you on?
I kept hoping the phone.
I kept hoping the phone would just stop ringing, that the insistence that I answer it would be over. But I knew from what Veronica had told me earlier that as long as her dad kept his phone to his ear, her phone would never stop ringing. With a burning in my chest, I moved my thumb over the phone and pressed ignore. Relief, guilt, and shame boiled within me, and I collapsed my head onto my knees and cried. Collecting myself, I went to the counter to see if there was any information on Veronica's condition, but not enough time had passed for there to be any news that would be good news. Before leaving the counter, I asked if I could make a call. I dialed my mum's number into the hospital phone. Looking at the clock on the wall, I saw that it was about 4 a.m., and I held my breath as the line sought a connection. She answered. I told her that I was fine, but that Veronica was not. She cursed at me and said she'd be right there, but I told her I wasn't leaving until Veronica was out of surgery. She said that she'd come anyway. The police entered the hospital just a little after I hung up the phone with my mother. They didn't have many questions for me, and the ones that they did have, weren't met with very helpful answers. I hadn't seen the driver. I didn't get the license plate. I could only tell them that I thought it was a brown car, and I couldn't even tell them how many doors were on it. As the police officers were walking away, I yelled to them, and they walked back over to where I was sitting. I told them that the car I was talking about had a big crack in the back window. Sensing how impotent I was feeling, one of the officers said that that would be a huge help.
Don't worry, we'll find him.
My mum and I didn't speak that much when she got to the hospital. After verifying that I was unharmed, her relief transitioned into anger. I told her I was sorry for lying, and she said that we'd talk about it later. For the majority of the time that we sat together in the waiting room, there was silence between us. There didn't seem to be anything to say. I think that had we just talked more in that room, if I just told her about boxes or the night with the raft, if she just told me more of the things what she knew, I think that things would have changed. But I didn't know that any of those things mattered. They were just distant memories of strange adventures to me. So while we sat there in silence, and she looked at me while I looked at the floor, she told me that she loved me and that I could call her whenever I wanted her to come get me. As my mum was leaving, Veronica's parents rushed in with the wide eyes of people who are attempting to see what is important in a room as quickly as possible. My mum must have called them after I spoke with her. Veronica's dad and my mum exchanged a few words that appeared to be quite serious, while Veronica's mother talked to the person at the desk. Her mother was a nurse, but didn't work at this hospital. I'm sure that she had tried to get Veronica transferred, but her condition was prohibitive. While all these conversations were taking place, I slipped Veronica's phone back in her purse to hide the evidence of the conversation that I was too much of a coward to have. The police talked to each of us, including me, for a second time. I told them what happened again. They made some notes, and then they left. Veronica came out of surgery several hours later with a thick white cast covering 90% of her body. Her right arm was free, but the rest of her was cocooned in plaster. Her parents and I walked into Veronica's room, and they never asked me for her purse. So I just set it on the table to the right of her bed. She was still under the anesthetic, but I remember how I felt when I had my cast before kindergarten. I asked the nurse for a marker, but I couldn't think of anything to write. I slept in a chair in the corner and went home the next day. I came back every afternoon for several days. At some point, they had moved another patient into her room and set up a screen around both beds to act as a partition. The divider was always closed, so I could never tell if the person in the adjacent bed was sleeping. However, I once caught a glimpse and saw that in addition to the cast on his left wrist, the occupant's face was completely covered in bandages. So I decided to always speak in a hushed tones just in case.
Alright, and we'll let Kenzie take over, but you gotta go.
Yeah, I'm gonna head off. But
Alrighty,
I'll speak to you a bit later, and hope the rest of the stream goes well.
sounds good, thanks.
Bye, Gemma.
All right. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. All right, you want me to take over?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Veronica didn't seem to be feeling better, but she had more moments of lucidity. But even during these periods, we wouldn't really talk. Her jaw had been broken by the car, so the doctors had wired it shut. I sat with her for a while, but there was nothing much I could say. I got up, walked over to her, and kissed her on the forehead. As I turned to leave the room, she whispered through her clenched teeth, "Josh." This surprised me a little, but I looked at her and said,
Has he not come to see you?
"No." I grew infuriated. Even if Josh had gone down the wrong path at some point, he should still come see his sister, I thought. I was about to express this when she said, "No, Josh, he ran away. I should have told you." I felt my blood turn into ice.
When? When did this happen?
2 years ago, a little after his 13th birthday.
How? Why do you think he ran away?
The note on his pillow. Started crying and I followed her. But I think now we were crying for different reasons, even if I didn't fully realize it. There was still so much that I didn't remember. so many connections I hadn't yet made, but I remembered the letter, even if I didn't know what it truly meant. I told her that I had to go, but that she could text me at any time. I pulled the phone out of her purse and set it on the table right next to her free hand. I asked her if she was going to be okay alone, and she told me that her mom was coming in a little later that day, so she would be fine. I got a text from her the next day, and I hesitated before opening it. When I read it, I wished I had hesitated just a little bit longer. It said, "Please don't come back here." It took me almost a full minute to type a simple, "Why not?" in reply, because my flustered brain kept directing my fingers to the wrong keys. She said that she didn't want me to see her like that again, and I agreed begrudgingly because it was only a temporary quarantine. We texted each other every day, though I kept this from my mom because I knew that she didn't like me talking to Veronica. The events of the night at the Dirt Theater had caused an intense strain in the dynamic between my mother and me, and our interactions became abruptly cold and infrequent after I asked her why she hadn't told me that Josh had run away. She claimed she simply did not know, that she didn't talk to his parents anymore. In a way, I thought this made sense. If I had fallen out of touch with Josh, my best friend, then why should I expect our respective parents to stay in close contact? But the fact that she had called them before coming to the hospital meant that she had their new number, which was something that I was never privy to, and this bothered me. Veronica's texts were fairly short, and mostly only in response to more lengthy texts that I would send her. I tried calling her once. I was sure she was screening her calls, but hoped that I could at least hear her voice. She picked up but didn't say anything. I could hear how labored her breathing was. I thought I might have heard her say my name, but it was hard to tell. Eventually, I just had to hang up to stop myself from crying again. About a week after she told me not to come see her anymore, she sent me a text that simply read, "I love you." I was filled with so many different emotions. No one from outside my family had ever said that to me before, and somehow reading those words, which came not as the compulsory and reflexive expression that ends phone calls between family members, but for someone who really felt it, showed me why those words were so powerful. There were so many words that I wanted to say, but only a few that I felt needed to say. I love you too. Over the next several weeks, the intensity grew. Veronica said that she wanted to be with me, and that she couldn't wait until she could see me again. She told me that she had been released from the hospital and was convalescing at her house, but every time I asked to come see her, she would always say soon. In the back of my mind, a nagging guilt tore at my jubilation. I realized that her feelings for me were most likely artificial symptoms of her injuries. Maybe she only felt close to me because she had almost been taken away from everything. Each time I received a message from her, however, those concerns evaporated in the heat of my happiness, and I would insist again that she let me see her.
Alright, I'll take over.
Okay?
Finally, the following week she said that she thought she might be able to make it to the next midnight movie. I couldn't believe it. I suggested that we meet somewhere that would be a little less strenuous, but she insisted that she would try. She said that she wanted to redo our date, and I admired her strength and optimism for that. I got a text from her the afternoon of the movie saying, "See you tonight." Chris's parents had found out about everything that had happened and said that I wasn't welcome at their house anymore, so I got Ryan to drive me. My mother tried to stop me, but I was bigger than her now, so I simply walked out of the house and got into Ryan's car. I explained to him that Veronica might be in bad shape, but that I really cared about her, so he should give us some space. He accepted that, and we head to the theater. Veronica didn't show. I had saved a seat for her right next to me near the exit, so she could get in and out easily, but 15 minutes into Akira, weep, a man slid into the chair. I whispered,
Was that really necessary?
"I don't know what you're talking about."
A woman is broken.
I whispered, "Excuse me, the seat's taken," but he didn't respond at all. He just stared ahead at the screen. I remember wanting to move because there was something wrong with the way he was breathing, but I forfeited after a while because I realized that Veronica wasn't coming. So it really didn't matter whether or where I sat or who sat next to me. I texted her the next day and asked if she was alright. I inquired as to why she didn't show the previous night, but she didn't respond. Despite my attempts to restrain myself and be patient, I messaged her repeatedly, pleading with her to at least tell me how she was feeling. She responded with what would turn out to be the last message I would receive from her. She simply said, "See you again, soon." She was delirious, and I was worried about her. I sent several replies, reminding her about the movie and saying it was no big deal, but she just stopped replying. I grew increasingly upset over the next several days. I couldn't reach her at her home because I didn't know that number, and I wasn't even sure where they lived. However, I knew that my mom knew at least one of these things. With no other options, I turned to my mother. I told her that I knew that she must know Veronica's parents' phone number, since I suspected that she had called them the night of the accident. I told her that I needed that number. She asked why, and when I told her that I hadn't heard from Veronica in days, I felt all of what little warmth was left in her suspicion dissipate. Do you want to do the mother's voice since Gemma's not here?
What do you mean?
I don't want to get into an argument with you over this, but she was supposed to meet me at the movies yesterday. I know there hasn't been much time since she got hit, but she said she would try to come, and after that she just stopped talking to me altogether. She must hate me. If we wouldn't have gone to that movie, then she would still be okay right now. I don't know what to do now. I just want to tell her that I'm sorry. That I'm sorry for everything. She looked confused, and I could read on her face that she was trying to tell if my mind had simply broken. There was intense compassion in her eyes that lingered for as long as she thought my hold on reality had slipped. When she saw that it hadn't, this compassion dissolved into defeated tears, and she pulled me toward her to embrace me. She was beginning to sob, but it seemed too intense of a reaction to my problem. I had no reason to think that she particularly cared for Veronica. Quite the opposite seemed true. She drew in a shuddering breath, and then said something that still makes me nauseous, even now.
'Cause dead, sweetheart. Oh God, I thought you knew.
I pulled away aggressively. What? What are you talking about? She said she was doing better. She said she was feeling better, Mom. There was a long pause. What happened to Veronica?
Dead, sweetie. She died on the last day you visited her. Oh, honey, she died weeks ago.
She had completely broken down, but I knew it wasn't because of Veronica. I staggered backwards. This wasn't possible. I had just exchanged messages with her yesterday. I could only think to ask one question. It was probably the most trivial one I could ask. Then why was her phone still on? Still sobbing, she didn't answer. I exploded. Why did it take them so long to shut off her goddamn phone? Her crying broke enough to mutter.
There's
My mother had told me that Veronica's parents had thought that her phone had been lost in the accident, despite the fact that I had put it in her purse the night she was brought to the hospital. When they retrieved her belongings, the phone was not among them, but they didn't deactivate the line. I asked my mom why this was, why they had failed to close her account, but she said she didn't know. But I think I know. I think they just couldn't bear to do even one more thing that forced them to admit that she was gone. They probably would have kept that line active forever, but they received a call from their service provider informing them of a massive impending charge for hundreds of pictures that had been sent from her phone. Pictures. Pictures that were all sent to my phone. Pictures that I never got because my phone couldn't receive them. They learned that they were all sent after the night Veronica died. They deactivated the phone immediately. I tried not to think about the contents of those pictures, but I remember wondering for some reason that I couldn't place whether I would have been in any of them. My mouth went dry, and I felt the painful sting of despair as I Thought of the last message I received from her phone. See you again soon.
Whew.
And that's the end of chapter 5.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. And I'm sorry for having you play yet another character who ends up dead.
Whatever. I got to voice the mom for a few minutes. It's nice having to voice someone who's not either dead or a cunt.
Fair.
We're so unfair to this one bit character who just had her car redone.
Wait, you have the gall to have repairs made to your car. Jesus Christ. How
Did
selfish.
you not think about your coworker's kid and her not kid?
Seriously. Just use a crystal ball and know next time, Samantha.
Fucking Samantha. They don't fail next time at your job that you need this woman.
Okay, so yeah, I see with all me getting into the big leagues now, you know, having a coffee and everything, taking requests, I should start a clothing line too, just like a shirt with this woman in like a work suit looking like dejected. It just says "Fuck you, Samantha."
You have to autograph it though as a big name pop star now.
Yes, absolutely. Oh shit, Ix, I didn't realize you came in. Gemma actually had to leave early, so I don't know if you've contacted her now or not. There's a great chapter, Simp and Chris Chan jokes aside.
Yeah, sorry.
And Kenzie, calling someone a weeb is always necessary.
A woman was broken. That was neither the time nor the place.
He went to go see Animu.
It's always necessary to let the weeb know they're a weeb. You just need to pick your battles.
I mean,
when his not girlfriend is, you know, broken and in pieces in the hospital, not the best time. When he orders her likeness on a body pillow, perfect time.
Okay, you went there.
No surprise, I tend to win.
Yes, you do. You are pretty cool.
Aw, thank you. You ain't too bad yourself.
Ah, shucks.
You know, singing aside.
I know I suck at singing. You don't have to rub it in.
I think okay, and I think everyone else could agree with me, is that I think you could totally have the chops to sing if you didn't sound like you wanted to die.
I just couldn't.
Like, if you didn't sound like you had the razor right up to your wrist as you're being forced to sing.
Jeez, that got dark.
And you actually are, put yourself into it. I think it would have been very lovely.
Well, if someone gives me $20, I'll try singing it again. With feeling
Rudy,
this
do
time.
your thing.
And I meant to say, though, there was a joke I wanted to say earlier when, like, the whole, like, put a picture of yourself on the college application, they'd accept you. Yeah, like, he worried that maybe she was offended by that, but in fairness, she did say that she was just barely passing high school. So...
Right. Well, she didn't say that. She just said her grades weren't great for the past couple years.
Oh, come on. That we all know that means that you suck at school.
No, I think that means that, at some point between senior year and maybe the latter half of sophomore year, she discovered weed.
Good point. Good point.
Darius, I agree with Kenzie. Thank you, Darius. See? We've got others wanting to... here's Raptor. Hope you're ready for Empress Teresa.
I don't think there's really any being ready for that, but I am looking forward to it. I've only read bits and pieces about what it's about.
Yeah, there's no being ready for that. There's just anticipation and dread.
I mean, after seeing a picture of the author, and his appearance literally made me nauseous.
Oh, please send that in Discord. I have to know.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you want, if you need a lady voice to be Teresa, I am all down.
Yeah, sure.
I will think of just the most unappealing, ear bleeding voice I can think of.
Okay,
And
have you ever watched Courage the Cowardly Dog?
who has not?
Okay, do you know the episode with Doc Gerbil?
It sounds familiar, but if you asked me to recall a voice, I could not tell you.
I might send you a clip like Eustace and Muriel get shrunken down and put into a vacuum cleaner. There's like this crazy old woman in there with suction cups for hands and who's obsessed with the lint in the cleaner. And she's just like, this half
Yeah,
of the lint is mine and that half is yours. You remember that we ain't gonna have no problems, you hear?
if you send that to me, I will practice my impersonation of it throughout the night.
Excellent.
I
Doesn't
would love for you to join, Kenzie. Thank you, Raptor.
Yes. Thank you, Raptor. That's awesome. Doesn't she
Not
get
to
magical
inject myself
powers?
into your guys' little powwow, but if I just throwing that out there, if you wanted a lady voice, I've been offering to help out Raptor with this stream.
Much appreciated. So yeah, well,
Because what friends would we be if we did not help Raptor get through one of the worst books of all time?
seriously. But yeah, well, that's going to be tomorrow, same time as this one.
I'll
So
be here.
excellent. All right, and I just want to thank well, according to my computer, the 3 people who are still around. And I hope you can tune in tomorrow for Empress Teresa. I'm going to try and do at least some Young Justice on Sunday, but it might have to be earlier in the day because I have 2 family birthdays to attend that day.
Mazel
And
tov.
oh, thank you. And then next Wednesday for more Penpal. And oh shit, I should have prepared some like blaring bagpipes to as a stand-in for Gemma saying goodbye, but I did not think that far ahead.
She's
So
with us in spirit.
yes.
You can hear the ghost of the bagpipes in the distance.
Alright, so I'll talk to you all later.
Good night, guys.
Tune in next time, same bean time.